If you've been looking for a video that explains what's been going on with the Mar-a-Largo raid, the warrant, the heavily redacted affidavit, which is really a mockery on memes these days, and also what the media's been putting out there in terms of misinformation and leaks and all this stuff, and you're just confused what's going on and what's legal and what's not legal, then this video is for you, because we're going to react to a video clip here with Mike Lee telling us all of this. Mike Lee is the founder of the Article 3 project. He is a former law clerk to Neil Gorsuch, Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, and we've talked about him on the channel here before, and it's going to break down the entire narrative, the whole timeline, and pay close attention to this because it's very interesting, and it should really end all discussion. But we know the media is and the left, they don't care about facts and evidence. But let's check this out, what he has to say. It's very, very interesting.
All right, let's get back to our big topic of the day, the affidavit that was just recently unsealed, though heavily redacted. Mike Davis is a former law clerk to Justice Neil Gorsuch, also founder and president of the Article 3 project. So I don't know, Mike, how much of a chance you've had to go through this. Some of it unredacted, much of it redacted. We know a little bit about the what. We still do not know much about the why in terms of the urgency to conduct an unprecedented raid of a former president's home. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so this affidavit, heavily redacted affidavit, it further evidences that this home raid on President Trump was unprecedented, it was unnecessary, and it was unlawful.
Unprecedented, unnecessary, and unlawful being the paramount thing.
And again, what I've been saying since August 8th, the president has the absolute constitutional authority to declassify anything he wants for any reason he wants, and he doesn't have to get permission from any bureaucrat at the National Archives to do that. And that is
all right. So he basically, we said this again in other video, that the president has the plenary constitutional authority to declassify or classify anything he or she wants.
Confirmed by a 1988 Supreme Court case, Department of the Navy versus Egan. So there goes the underlying potential charge for espionage that's in this, that was in this warrant.
All right, so I don't keep stopping here, but I want to make sure we get this. So based on this 1988 case, that confirms what I just said in terms of, and what Mike just said, in terms of the president has plenary constitutional authority to declassify or classify anything he wants, anytime he wants. But the key point here is, here's the key point. He doesn't need anyone's authority to do it. He doesn't need a bureaucrat to do it. He doesn't need Congress to do it. He can just do it.
1988 Supreme Court case, Department of the Navy versus Egan. So there goes the underlying potential charge for espionage that's in this, that was in this warrant. Second point, the president has the sole statutory authority to make the determination whether a record is a personal record that belongs to him or a presidential record that goes to the bureaucrats at the National Archives and then almost certainly gets sent back to the president to put in his former library, or the former president's library. And that is confirmed by a 2012 decision by an Obama judge related to Judicial Watch and Tom Fenton's lawsuits against President Clinton related to 8 years of audio tapes in his sock drawer. So,
okay, now this part is very key, which I don't think most people are going to get. The espionage piece, which let's rehash that real quickly, make sure we're clear. The espionage case goes out the window because of that 1988 Supreme Court decision, because the president has the ability to declassify and classify. That's pretty clear cut. But what's not clear cut is this whole statutory issue with personal records versus presidential records. The presidential records go to the archives, and that gets to a process, and ultimately it goes back to the president and goes into his presidential library. Okay, presidents, if you don't know this, have been traditionally going back. I think not every president has a library, but in the recent memory, we've had presidents, when they are out of office, they can have a presidential library, which is held by the, I guess, the U.S. Archives. And then that's where all their records go, all their presidential memos go, and all that stuff. All right, that's presidential records. Personal records are personal records. What, I don't know. I mean, a teacup that he bought, while he was in, someplace somewhere. That could be his personal thing. But the point is that the president has statutory rights over that to make that determination. And then he talks about a Obama judge verifying this, going back to Clinton, who was having audio tapes that he had in his sock drawer. Let's be clear on that. So now we have two cases that are totally not relevant: espionage and obstruction.
Against President Clinton related to 8 years of audio tapes in his sock drawer. So what is left? They're looking at obstruction. Well, it is legally impossible for a former president to obstruct investigations into non-crimes. The Justice Department did not have the power to even look at these crimes, because it doesn't matter what the evidence shows in this affidavit. No matter what that evidence shows, as a matter of law, it is legally impossible for President Trump to have committed espionage or to have violated some Presidential Records Act. The Presidential Records Act actually contemplates that former presidents have classified records. It doesn't differentiate. Congress gives former...
And that's also a key point there. Okay, let's go back. Espionage off the table because of the 1988 case and the statute of differentiation between a presidential record and a personal record off the table because of the Obama judge decision. But here's another key point that Mike points out here is the fact that that Records Act doesn't distinguish between classified versus non-classified. That's key, because that is a big deal, which means it doesn't matter. They actually expect a president or former president to have some classified related material, which is why they put stuff and provisions in place to protect against it. He talks about that right here.
Presidential Records Act actually contemplates that former presidents have classified records. It doesn't differentiate. Congress gives former presidents office space, secure office space. They give the former president's staff security clearances, Secret Service protection to guard these paper records. And there's no allegation that any of these records got into the wrong hands, unlike Hillary Clinton's home server, where she had foreign governments hack the most highly classified secrets in our government, and she didn't get an FBI raid. So what was so urgent?
All right, so let's stop there. So essentially, like I said, Congress, knowing the Records Act, says that there's no differentiation between classified information and personal records or presidential records, for that matter. Congress makes provisions to secure those materials, whether it be locks or confidential rooms or anything like that, Secret Service protection, to make sure these records don't get out of hand or into the hands of someone else, unlike Hillary Clinton did, which is unsecure server. And that is all part of that, and it's understood. And that's what people are missing here in the mainstream media and stuff that's coming out. So again, no matter what was in those affidavits, no matter what it said, they had no constitutional grounds to move on that because of the first point, that the president has ability to declassify or classify anything he wants. And he has the ability to determine what is personal, what is presidential. And the Records Act doesn't distinguish between classified information versus non-classified information. In fact, it assumes that that's going to be there, which is why they give them locks and secure stuff and Secret Service to protect it.
Home server, where she had foreign governments hack the most highly classified secrets in our government, and she didn't get an FBI raid. So what was so urgent that caused the Biden Justice Department to go get these records? And I think it's because President Trump declassified and made personal a copy of his copy of the Crossfire Hurricane records, the Russian collusion records, and the Biden Justice Department never made them public because they're so damning on Obama, Hillary Clinton, the FBI, and the intel community.
Yet we know that this unsealed affidavit did reveal 14 of the 15 boxes retrieved from the former president earlier this year did contain 184 documents with the classified markings. We learned of those documents, 67 were marked confidential, 92 were marked secret, 25 documents were marked top secret. So if the president was being, and if we were able to see a trail of that actually happening, it doesn't appear in this document, or at least it's redacted if it is in that document. If there is a trail of authorities asking on multiple occasions the president to turn over those documents, which they apparently knew were there, isn't that a problem, Mike?
Okay, so right now she is basically talking like the left here, or asking questions and pointing out questions that you're seeing on the left, or not even really questions, accusations of, well, what about these documents? If they knew they were there, they asked for them, he didn't give them to them. So what gives? obviously she was not really paying attention to what Mike Lee said. He's going to further clarify that it doesn't matter what they asked for because, well, here you go.
If the president had the opportunity to hand these documents over when asked.
The librarians are asking for overdue copies of the overdue books that are not overdue. The president has the legal right to declassify these records and keep a personal copy. They did. The former president had every right to keep these records, and the bureaucrats at the archives did not, as confirmed by the 1988 Supreme Court decision, Department of Navy versus Egan, and the 2012 Judicial Watch case against President Obama with the tapes in his sock drawer. They can demand them all they want. And the question you have to ask is, okay, so they're demanding these records, and Attorney General Merrick Garland leaked that he was deliberating for weeks on whether to order this home raid before he went to a biased judge, Bruce Reinhart, down in Florida, who just recused from President Trump's civil lawsuit versus Hillary Clinton because of his 2017 Facebook post where he bashed President Trump's integrity. So if he had weeks to deliberate, why didn't Attorney General Merrick Garland get an opinion from the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel, or OLC? And the reason he didn't get it, presumably, is because he would not have gotten the answer he wanted. This was a political raid on a former president and someone who is almost certainly going to be
when
a
you
political...
say presume.
Okay, let's stop there. He said a lot there. So essentially, he answered her question by saying that the librarians were wanting overdue material that they had no business getting to begin with, because again, going back to those two cases he just mentioned, that again, for the fifth time, that the president has the ability to declassify or classify whatever he wants, the statutory grounds of him being able to determine personal versus presidential, and all that stuff is all under his control, and they had no right to ask for them or get them anyway because of those reasons. And now he gets into something else in terms of, okay, what's really behind all this? He talks about Merrick Garland. He talks about this judge they're looking for, how he spent weeks thinking about this, but he didn't seek legal advice from his legal counsel and all of these things. And now what's really behind all this? And it's obvious that it looks like this is going to be a political move.
Do you know that to be the case?
Of President Biden.
When you say presumably, do you know that to be the case?
Presumably that he's going to run for president?
No, that there was a trail of him not wanting to ask because he wasn't going to get the answer that he wanted.
Well, I mean, why else would, if he had weeks to deliberate on something this unprecedented and consequential, why would he not seek an opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel on this? This is a political raid that was, and then they said that the Attorney General didn't personally authorize this raid. He absolutely did. They also said that the Biden White House was not involved with this raid. They absolutely were, because White House Deputy Counsel to the President, Jonathan Sue, had to relay that President Biden waived President Trump's assertion of executive privilege, which paved the way for this raid. And so President Biden was absolutely involved in this raid, and so were his officials in the Biden White House counsel's office, Jonathan Sue. This is a political hit on a former president.
So right there at the end, Mike Davis is saying, look, Biden knew. He said he didn't know, but he knew because he had to pave the way by lifting the executive privilege and allowing this raid to even happen. That's number one. And number two, this whole thing with, Merrick Garland saying he deliberated all this time, but never sought help from the legal office of his legal counsel, essentially, Sue. And that didn't happen. And so it's so important. Why didn't he do that? It didn't happen. So obviously there's something going on. He makes that assertion, and I'm sure there's gonna be more on that. And as of right now, this has been moved to another judge to oversee the process. And that's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this, because someone with a third eye needs to come in and look at this. So that's where we are with this. I hope that clears things up. And if you like what we do in this channel, where we take pop culture and politics and give it to you in a conservative manner, then please check out some more content that we have for you right here.